Where exactly do you think you're going? I have an appointment on the 14th floor. 14th floor. You have an appointment. My name is on the visitor log, if you'd like to verify. I don't need to verify anything. I need you to tell me what you think you're doing walking in here dressed like that. Carrying that thing like you own the place. Let me explain something to you. I've been running this lobby for 5 years. 5 years. I have learned to read exactly who belongs in this building and who doesn't. And you don't belong here. I understand you see it that way. May I show you my identification? Sir! You need to leave right now! I will not ask you again.
Let me take you back to where this began. 5:20 in the morning, and Atlanta was still dark. The kind of dark that sits heavy on a city right before the sky decides to change its mind. A few distant headlights, the hiss of a street cleaner somewhere on Peachtree, the low rumble of the first MARTA train rolling through underground tunnels like a secret the city keeps from itself. In a penthouse apartment in Buckhead, on the 14th floor of a building he'd owned for 3 years, a man was already awake. No alarm, no rush, just discipline. Marcus Calloway stood barefoot at his kitchen counter, both hands wrapped around a plain white mug of black coffee. No sugar, no cream. He didn't read the news on his phone like most people. He read an actual newspaper, folded in half, the way his mother taught him. One section at a time. No skimming. The penthouse was quiet, clean, deliberately simple. No art on the walls. No trophies on the shelves. No framed magazine covers or signed sports jerseys, or the kind of decorative noise that wealthy people use to tell rooms full of strangers how important they are. Just books. Stacks of them on every flat surface. Finance, history, corporate law, organizational psychology, the kind of books that don't have interesting covers but rewrite the way you understand the world. If you walked into that penthouse as a stranger, you would not guess, not even close, that the man standing barefoot at that counter was worth more than most of the buildings visible from his window. Marcus ran Calloway Capital Advisors, a private equity firm that specialized in a very specific kind of deal. He found underperforming companies, businesses with strong bones but rotten interiors, and he acquired them. Then he gutted everything that didn't work. The bad management, the corrupt culture, the unspoken policies that everyone inside the company knew about and nobody talked about. He rebuilt from the foundation up. His portfolio was worth just north of $900 million. He was 41 years old, the son of a woman who mopped floors for a living. And today, this Wednesday morning, this quiet, dark Atlanta morning, he was about to spend $350 million on a company called Meridian Security Group. He set down his coffee. He picked up the phone. His attorney, Elliot Voss, answered on the first ring. Because Elliot Voss always answered on the first ring when Marcus was calling this early. "Everything good on your end?" Marcus asked. "Clean and ready. Every clause locked. I can have you in a closing room by 2 this afternoon." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Not yet." Elliot paused. "Marcus, I want to go in first." "Go in where?" "The front door." Silence on the line. The kind of silence between two people where one of them knows what's coming and the other one hasn't explained it yet but doesn't really need to. "You're about to spend $350 million on this company," Elliot said carefully. "What do you mean, go in the front door?" "I mean what I said. I'm going to walk through that lobby the way a stranger walks through it. Someone who doesn't look like he belongs. Someone who looks the way my mother looked every time she walked into a building like that one." Elliot went quiet again. Longer this time. He knew that tone. He'd heard it before, in 4 years of working with Marcus Calloway. That particular quietness in his voice. Measured, decided, The sound a man makes when he's not asking permission and isn't going to. "I'll be available when you're ready to close," Elliot said finally. "Thank you." Marcus hung up. He walked to the hallway closet. He passed the row of tailored suits, Italian wool and charcoal and navy and deep black, pressed shirts in white and pale blue, the kind of clothes that announce a man before he opens his mouth. He reached past all of it, to the back of the closet, where a single hook held a plain black hoodie, faded at the cuffs, soft from years of washing, the kind of garment that renders a person invisible in certain rooms and a target in others. He pulled it on. He found a pair of worn sneakers on the bottom shelf, white once, now the color of old chalk, a small scuff on the left toe that he'd never bothered to fix. Then he crossed to his desk. On the corner of the desk sat a leather folder, old enough that the spine had cracked in 2 places. The corners were worn down to pale raw hide where the color had rubbed off. The clasp on the front had broken years ago and been repaired with a small brass brad that didn't quite match. This folder had belonged to his mother. Her name was Evelyn Calloway, and for 24 years, she had carried this folder to work every single day. It held her schedule, her client codes, her timesheets, her building access cards. She cleaned offices in downtown Atlanta, mopped hallways, emptied trash cans, scrubbed bathrooms, maintained the kind of invisible infrastructure that allows other people's important days to run smoothly. The people whose offices she cleaned rarely looked at her face. They didn't learn her name. She was the woman who made the mess disappear. She was background noise. She was, in the language of the building she served, the help. She used to say something to Marcus when he was young, something she repeated so often it became the first thing he heard in the morning and the last thing he thought about at night. "Baby, you want to know everything you need to know about a person? Watch how they treat someone they think can't do anything for them." Marcus slid the Meridian acquisition documents into his mother's folder. Closing papers, financial statements, the full acquisition proposal. Every page stamped with the logo of Calloway Capital Advisors. Then he reached into the front pocket of the folder and tucked in a small photograph, worn at the edges, faded just enough that the colors had gentled with age. Evelyn Calloway in her work uniform, gray slacks, white polo, company logo on the breast pocket, a mop handle in one hand, her lunch bag in the other, standing outside an office building on a Tuesday morning 20 years ago. She was smiling, not a performed smile, not a polite one, a real one, the kind that comes from a woman who is tired in her bones but proud in her spirit and has raised a son who will carry her dignity long after she is gone. Marcus looked at himself in the hallway mirror. Black hoodie, white sneakers, cracked leather folder with a broken clasp. He looked like nobody. That was the point. He took the elevator to the parking garage, bypassed the Mercedes and the Range Rover, and unlocked a 12-year-old Honda Civic. Silver once, now closer to gray. A dent in the rear bumper from a parking lot incident in 2019 that he'd never gotten around to fixing. Faded paint along the hood where the sun had done its work. He kept the car for the same reason he kept the hoodie, because forgetting where you came from is the most dangerous thing a man can do. 20 minutes later, he pulled into a visitor spot across the street from Meridian Security Group. The building was 18 stories of glass and polished steel. It caught the afternoon light and threw it back at you like a challenge. The lobby glowed pale white through the revolving doors. A massive silver logo, a stylized compass rose above the company name, was mounted on the facade above the entrance. Security cameras at every corner, every angle covered. Marcus stepped out of the car, folder under his arm, Hoodie zipped to the chin, he crossed the street, he pushed through the revolving door, and the moment his sneakers touched that marble floor, the lobby changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way a room temperature drops by 2 degrees when a window opens somewhere you can't see. Subtle, unmistakable. Every eye in the lobby turned, not with welcome, with suspicion. The lobby of Meridian Security Group was designed to impress and, beneath the impression, to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings, white marble floors so polished they caught your reflection and held it upside down beneath your feet. Recessed lighting so precise it felt clinical. The kind of light that makes you aware of every imperfection you walked in with. A 20-foot reception desk ran the width of the space, backlit in soft white, staffed by 2 women in matching charcoal blazers. The entire effect said, "You are a guest here. We will decide how long you stay." Behind the desk on the left sat Cassie Elliott, early 30s. Dark hair pulled back, posture so straight it looked practiced, a customer service smile that she deployed like a tool, useful, precise, deployed only when the situation warranted it. Beside her, a younger woman named Jordan, 24, maybe 25, fingers resting on a keyboard, eyes alert. Both of them looked up when Marcus walked in. Cassie's eyes moved, down the hoodie, down to the sneakers, back up to the worn leather folder. Her smile didn't form. It started to, then thought better of it. She glanced at Jordan. Jordan glanced back. The kind of look that travels between 2 people without a word. The kind that says, "He doesn't fit." Neither of them spoke. Marcus walked toward the reception desk. Steady pace, shoulders back, folder tucked under his arm with the careful confidence of a man who knows exactly why he's carrying it. His sneakers made soft, quiet sounds on the marble that somehow felt louder than they should have in that enormous space. He didn't make it 10 steps. "Hey!" The voice came from the left. Sharp, loud. The kind of voice built for command, deployed here the way a hammer gets used on a screw. Vernon Sykes stepped out from behind a marble pillar near the elevator bank, 6'1", 220 pounds of compressed certainty, black uniform pressed with the kind of military precision that suggests the person inside it never quite left basic training, badge centered exactly on his chest, silver watch on his left wrist, a jaw set so tight the muscles along it were permanently visible. Vernon had been the head lobby supervisor at Meridian Security for 5 years. In those 5 years, he had developed a very specific understanding of his role. His job, as he saw it, was not merely to monitor the lobby. His job was to own it. Every visitor, every delivery, every contractor, every stranger who pushed through those revolving doors, they all went through Vernon first. And Vernon decided who belonged. He had a gift for it. An instinct, he called it. The ability to read a person in under 3 seconds. To know, before a single word was exchanged, whether someone was supposed to be standing on his marble or whether they needed to be redirected, efficiently, firmly, without ambiguity. He was rarely wrong about the people he approved. He was occasionally wrong about the people he turned away. He had never once considered the difference. He walked toward Marcus with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who has never been required to hurry. He stopped 3 feet away. His eyes moved over Marcus the way an inspector moves over a vehicle he expects to fail. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus met his eyes. His voice was even, quiet, and completely unbothered. "Good afternoon. I have an appointment on the 14th floor. Vernon's head tilted, slowly, a fraction of an inch to the right. The way a person tilts their head when they've heard something they don't quite believe. 14th floor. He said it like a fact being returned to sender. That's right. Marcus kept his tone exactly where it was. I'm on the visitor log. 3 o'clock. G. Calloway. Vernon's mouth curved. Not a smile. Something that borrowed the shape of a smile and used it for the opposite purpose. You have an appointment? Yes. On 14? Yes. With who? If you'll allow me to check in at the desk, I can... I'm asking you, Vernon said, taking one step closer. With who? The gap between them was now less than 1.5 feet. Marcus could see the individual threads in Vernon's uniform, could see the slight redness along the bridge of his nose, could see, in the set of Vernon's jaw and the stillness of his eyes, the specific quality of contempt that requires no reason to exist. It just existed, like weather. I'd prefer to check in properly, Marcus said. I don't want to take up more of your time than... Get away from that door. Vernon's voice rose. Not all the way. Just enough to ripple across the marble and reach the ears of everyone in the lobby. Touch it again, and I will put you on the ground. Marcus hadn't touched any door. That was the first time Marcus understood exactly what kind of test this was going to be. Sir, Marcus said quietly, I just need a moment to show you my... Did I ask you to talk? Vernon's voice was fully loud now. Not quite a shout, but close. The kind of volume that fills a room and pins everyone in it against the walls. Do you have any idea where you are? Look at you. He actually gestured at Marcus. A full up and down sweep of his hand. The way a person gestures at something they find distasteful. You walked into the wrong building. You walked into the wrong building on the wrong day. The lobby held its breath. Cassie Elliott gripped the edge of the reception desk. Her knuckles were pale. Her eyes were fixed on a point somewhere between Marcus and Vernon that was neither of them. Jordan had taken her hands off the keyboard entirely. They sat in her lap. She was very still. A man in a blue suit near the elevator doors was watching his phone screen with intense focus. The screen was dark. A woman with a briefcase and a visitor badge had stopped walking toward the exit. She was staring at the floor with the particular concentration of someone who desperately wants to be invisible. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody chose. Marcus took a slow, measured breath. He felt his pulse in his temples. He felt the weight of being in a room full of witnesses and understanding, with complete clarity that none of them were going to intervene. The silence from all those people was heavier than anything Vernon could have said. But Marcus Calloway had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Not this specific lobby, not this specific guard, but this moment, this particular species of humiliation had been present in his life since he was 9 years old, watching it happen to his mother in a lobby not entirely unlike this one. He did not raise his voice. He did not step back. He said it calmly, clearly, like a man reading a prepared statement. My name is on the visitor log. 3 o'clock, 14th floor. I have a scheduled meeting. If you check the desk, you'll find my name. Vernon looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked over his shoulder at Cassie. He was smiling, making sure she was watching. You got a meeting on 14? He turned back. The smile was gone. Something considerably colder had replaced it. His voice dropped into a register that was almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. Men who look like you don't take meetings here. You understand me? Men who look like you don't sit at tables on floor 14. You take orders. Or... He paused. Let the pause do the work. You take the consequences of not following them. Marcus reached toward the front pocket of his hoodie, slowly, deliberately, 2 fingers, going for his ID. He never got there. Vernon moved fast for a big man. Both hands shot out and grabbed the front of the hoodie. The fabric twisted in his grip. The zipper tab broke. Marcus felt his balance shift, felt the sudden loss of ground beneath his feet. I said, "Don't move." In one controlled motion, Vernon spun him around and wrenched his right arm behind his back. A sharp, white-hot pain exploded up Marcus's shoulder. The leather folder slipped from his grip. His fingers scraped the cracked leather, Mom's folder, but Vernon pulled harder, and the folder hit the marble with a flat, dense impact that echoed through the entire lobby like a single struck note. Then the floor came up fast. Vernon drove him down, face first. Marcus's cheekbone connected with the marble with a sound that was both dull and sharp at once, a crack that seemed to travel through the floor and up the walls and settle somewhere in the chest of everyone who heard it. The cold went through his skin like a current. White light bloomed behind his eyes. The taste of copper spread across his tongue. The leather folder had skidded 3 feet from his face. It had come open on impact. Papers spread across the polished marble in a wide arc. Acquisition documents, financial statements, the confidential closing proposal for Meridian Security Group. Pages stamped with the logo of Calloway Capital Advisors. Numbers with more zeros than most people in this building had seen in a single document. The photograph had come loose. Evelyn Calloway in her work uniform looked up from the marble floor of her son's future company. Cassie stood up from her chair. She didn't go anywhere. She just stood, one hand pressed over her mouth, both eyes very wide. Jordan had pushed her chair back so hard it had rolled into the wall. The man in the blue suit turned completely away. He was very suddenly absorbed by the elevator buttons. The woman with the briefcase left. Nobody helped. Vernon put his knee in the center of Marcus's back. 220 pounds. Marcus felt his ribs compress, felt the air leave him, felt the vibration of footsteps as people adjusted their paths to walk around him, not toward him. "Stay down," Vernon said. He wasn't even breathing hard. Marcus lay on the marble with his cheek against the cold floor, and his eyes on his mother's photograph 3 feet away, and his right shoulder screaming, and his ribs aching, and the full weight of the entire lobby pressing down on him from all directions. Not just Vernon's knee, but the silence of every person who saw what was happening and chose to let it continue. That silence was the heaviest thing in the room. He took a slow breath, and then another. He felt the cold marble against his skin, and he felt the heat of the knee in his back, and he thought about his mother standing outside an office building with a mop in her hand, and a lunch bag in the other, and a proud smile on her tired face. He said one thing, quiet enough that only the floor could hear it. "You're going to remember this day for the rest of your life." Vernon didn't respond. Maybe he didn't hear it. Maybe it didn't matter. He grabbed Marcus by the back of his hoodie, hauled him upright, and turned him toward the side corridor. Not the main entrance, not the glass doors where the clients came in, the service corridor. 2 other guards materialized from somewhere, younger, both of them, faces carefully blank, the way young employees learn to make their faces blank when they want no part of what's happening but lack the courage to say so. They each took one of Marcus's arms. They walked him down the narrow corridor. The marble gave way to bare concrete underfoot. The elegant ceiling dropped to buzzing fluorescent tubes. The walls changed from polished stone to scuffed gray paint. The air changed from expensive cleaning solution to cardboard and industrial bleach. A heavy metal door at the end. It swung open onto a service alley behind the building. Dumpsters against the wall. A loading dock, empty. The smell of exhaust and warm garbage hanging in the afternoon air. They let go of his arms. The door slammed shut behind him. The sound rang through the alley like something final. Back inside the lobby, Vernon Sykes straightened his uniform. He tugged each cuff. He adjusted his badge until it sat perfectly centered. He ran a palm over his hair. Then he looked at Cassie and Jordan with an expression that was somewhere between satisfaction and boredom. "Trespasser?" Tried to bluff his way upstairs. He shrugged. "Handled." He chuckled. Shook his head. The way you shake your head at something that was almost funny. He walked back to his post, folded his arms across his chest, planted his feet wide on the marble. Business, as usual. But behind the reception desk, Cassie Elliott was on her knees on the floor. Her hands were shaking. She was picking up the scattered papers one by one, carefully, holding each one at the corner as if it might break. She turned over the first sheet. Read it? Her brow creased. She picked up another. Her eyes moved faster across the lines. Calloway Capital Advisors, confidential acquisition proposal. Target entity, Meridian Security Group. Transaction value, $350 million. She looked up. She looked at the side corridor where they had walked him. She looked at Vernon, back at his post, leaning against the marble pillar with one thumb scrolling through his phone. Completely relaxed, completely satisfied. Not a single cloud crossing his face. Cassie's mouth opened, then it closed. She gathered the papers into a neat stack, pressed them flat with trembling fingers. She placed them back inside the old leather folder and set it on the corner of her desk. She put her hand on the cracked leather and held it there. And she said nothing. She said nothing. Half an hour later, Bruce Garland, head of security operations at Meridian, walked through the lobby on his way to the elevator. Mid-50s, thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses that he wore pushed slightly too low on his nose. The particular walk of a man who has spent 15 years learning to appear busy without actually being disturbed. He slowed when he noticed Vernon's posture, the pride in it, the satisfaction. Something happened? Handled a situation. Guy tried to walk in without clearance. File a report. Vernon waved a hand. For what? Some guy in a hoodie? That's not paperwork, Bruce. That's Tuesday. Bruce looked at him for a moment. His eyes moved to the reception desk, to Cassie, sitting very still, hands flat on the surface, eyes fixed on the middle distance, to the worn leather folder on the corner of her desk, to the papers inside it, stacked with unusual
Sir, you
care.
cannot take those files.
Something almost
This
registered.
is my firm, young lady.
Almost. But Bruce Garland had spent 15 years mastering a very particular professional skill. The skill of looking directly at a problem and seeing nothing. Of hearing a complaint and finding a drawer for it. Of being present in the exact moment when intervention might matter and discovering, in that precise moment, something urgent that required him to be elsewhere. He looked at Vernon. Keep it documented next time. He walked to the elevator. He disappeared. At her desk, Cassie Elliott stared at the leather folder and did not say a word. The afternoon lobby continued. Phones rang, badges swiped, elevators chimed. The marble floor where a man's face had been pressed against the stone 3 minutes ago was already dry, already clean, already to every eye in the room, completely indifferent. At the end of his shift, Vernon walked past the reception desk. He noticed the folder. What's that? It fell, Cassie said. Her voice was flat. Earlier, I picked up the papers. Vernon picked it up, flipped it open. His eyes moved across the top sheet with the lazy attention of a man performing a gesture rather than actually reading. He saw a company name. He saw numbers. He didn't connect them to anything because nothing in his worldview required him to connect them. He dropped the folder back on the desk. Lost and found, or trash, whatever. He walked toward the exit, whistling. Before he clocked out, Vernon pulled up the visitor log on the lobby terminal. Force of habit. He scrolled through the afternoon entries. His finger stopped. 3 p.m., G. Calloway, Calloway Capital Advisors, Floor 14, RE, Acquisition Meeting. His eyes moved over the entry. G. Calloway, Calloway Capital, Floor 14, the same floor the man in the hoodie had said. Vernon stood there for 3 seconds. Then he logged out, grabbed his jacket, and walked through the glass doors into the warm Atlanta evening without a single thought in his head, besides where he was going to eat dinner. The building swallowed the silence behind him. The service alley behind Meridian Security smelled like diesel and old cardboard. Dumpsters, a loading dock, a rusted fire escape overhead. The kind of place that exists to be invisible. Marcus Calloway sat in his old Honda Civic in the parking lot across the street, engine off, windows up, both hands on the steering wheel. His left cheekbone was swelling. A thin red line ran from his temple to his jaw where the marble had opened the skin. His right shoulder throbbed with the deep, continuous ache of a joint that had been torqued past its comfortable range. His ribs hurt on the left side every time he took a full breath. He sat very still. Through the windshield, the Meridian building caught the late afternoon sun. All that glass throwing gold light across the street. The lobby glowing warm and white behind the revolving doors. Clean. Professional. Untouched. He reached across to the passenger seat. His mother's folder wasn't there. The thought of it sitting on some desk in that lobby, subject to Vernon Sykes' casual indifference, sent a heat through his chest that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with something older and more personal. But Marcus Calloway did not punch the steering wheel. He did not scream. He did not call a lawyer and start talking about lawsuits. He picked up his phone and dialed. Elliot Voss answered on the second ring. "Marcus, how'd it go?" Silence. 3 seconds. 4. "Elliot." "Yeah. Sign tonight. Close everything before 8 a.m. tomorrow." A pause. "Tell me what happened." "He put me on the floor. Marble floor, his knee in my back, arm behind my back, walked me out through the service entrance like I was being discarded." A long silence on the line, the kind of silence that fills slowly with something that needs room to breathe before it turns into anything coherent. "I'm calling the police." "No, Marcus. Not yet. Not before we close. I want to own that building before the sun comes up tomorrow. And then I want to walk back through that front door. And then..." Marcus looked at the building through the windshield. "And then I want to sit at that table on the 14th floor. And I want to look that man in the eye when he finally understands exactly what he did and who he did it to." Elliot exhaled slowly. "Papers ready by 9 tonight." "Thank you." Marcus hung up. He reached into the front pocket of his hoodie and pulled out the one thing that hadn't been lost on that marble floor. The photograph. Evelyn Calloway. Work uniform. Mop. Lunch bag. Tired eyes. The kind of smile that has earned the right to exist. He pressed his thumb lightly against the image. "Almost, Mama. Almost. Let me tell you about Marcus Calloway. Because a man like him doesn't arrive in a lobby in a worn-out hoodie by accident. He grew up in the Mechanicsville neighborhood of Atlanta. 4 rooms, 3 people. His mother, his grandmother, and Marcus himself, from the time he was 8 years old, and his father had decided fatherhood wasn't a commitment he was built for. Evelyn Calloway worked 2 jobs for most of Marcus's childhood. Days at an office cleaning service downtown, evenings at a hotel laundry on the west side. She came home most nights too tired to take her shoes off before sitting down. She sat in the kitchen chair by the door and closed her eyes for 3 minutes. Exactly 3 minutes, Marcus would time it. And then she stood up and made dinner. She never complained. Not once. Not where he could hear it. But Marcus heard other things. He heard the way certain people spoke to her when she was working. The dismissal in their voices. the absence of eye contact. The particular way a person acknowledges that another human being is present in a room without according them the status of actually being a person in that room. He heard it, and he stored it, and he didn't let himself feel it fully until he was old enough to understand what to do with it. He got a scholarship to Morehouse on the strength of grades that his teachers called exceptional, and his mother called the natural result of a child raised around books. He graduated with a degree in finance, then a law degree from Emory, then 4 years at a consulting firm in New York that paid him extraordinarily well and taught him everything he needed to know about how corporate America worked from the inside. Then he came back to Atlanta. He came back because his mother was still here, still working, still carrying that leather folder to buildings downtown where nobody knew her name. He came back because he had a plan. The plan was this: find the companies that operated like the rooms he grew up watching his mother get ignored in. Find the ones where the culture of disrespect had curdled into something systemic and quiet and accepted. Acquire them, transform them, make them into something his mother could walk into and feel like a person. In 14 years, he had done it 11 times. Meridian Security Group was about to be the 12th. He had spent 6 months studying the company before approaching the board. Every quarterly filing, every internal audit report he could legally obtain, every employment discrimination complaint filed with the EEOC over the past 4 years. There were 9 of them, all arising from incidents in Meridian facilities, most of them buried before they reached any meaningful stage of investigation. He'd read every one. He'd known before he drove to that building in his Honda Civic what kind of lobby he was walking into. He just needed to see it for himself. His mother's voice, the way someone treats a person they think is beneath them. That tells you everything. He'd seen it. He had everything he needed. That night, the penthouse was quiet. Elliot arrived at 9:15 with a black briefcase and a look on his face that mixed professional calm with the specific discomfort of a man who knows he can't fix the thing that actually needs fixing. The acquisition documents were laid out on the dining table, every page reviewed, every clause confirmed. Marcus read the entire document, cover to cover, slowly, the way his mother had taught him to read anything before signing it. Then he picked up the pen. 3 signatures, 2 initials, 1 date. Done. At 9:47 p.m., on a Wednesday, Marcus Calloway became the sole owner of Meridian Security Group. $350 million, 18 floors of glass and steel, every desk, every chair, every badge, every security terminal, including the 6 cameras mounted in the lobby that had recorded every second of what Vernon Sykes had done that afternoon. 4 angles, crystal clear resolution, every word, every gesture, every moment captured in perfect, unambiguous, irrefutable detail. Marcus set down the pen. He looked at Elliot. 8 a.m. tomorrow. I want the acquisition announcement on every screen in the building before the first shift clocks in, and I want our team in the lobby early. The guard! Marcus's jaw tightened. The kind of tightening that doesn't come from anger. It comes from a decision being made. Bring him to 14. I'll handle it myself. He walked to the bedroom. He laid out a suit on the bed. Charcoal, Italian wool, the kind of cut that requires nothing else in the room to make a statement. He placed his mother's photograph on the nightstand beside it. On the bathroom floor, the black hoodie lay where he'd left it. The zipper tab was broken. The collar was stretched. There was a faint smear of dried blood on the left cheek where the marble had opened the skin. He didn't touch it. Tomorrow, Marcus Calloway would walk back into Meridian Security Group. This time, he wouldn't be a stranger. This time, he would be the owner. This act may be performed as a return-to-the-scene reflection, told from the perspective of Cassie Elliott's internal experience. It provides the emotional anchor and witness perspective that the audience needs before the reckoning. Cassie Elliott didn't sleep that night. She lay in her apartment in the Virginia Highland neighborhood, with the ceiling fan turning slow overhead and the document images burning behind her eyelids every time she closed her eyes. Calloway Capital Advisors, confidential, target entity, Meridian Security Group, transaction value, $350 million. She had picked those papers up one by one from the marble floor. She had read them. She had understood them. And she had said nothing. She told herself it was because she didn't know what to do. She told herself it was because the situation had moved too fast. She told herself she needed more time to think, but in the honest, quiet, unprotected part of herself that the ceiling fan's white noise couldn't quite cover, she knew the truth. She had said nothing because she was afraid. She knew what happened to people who made noise at Meridian. She'd watched it happen. The last person to file a formal complaint against Vernon, a part-time security guard named Devante who had documented 3 separate incidents in writing, had been assigned to overnight parking duty within a week. He was gone 2 months later. She knew Bruce Garland's filing habits. She knew what reviewed, no action required meant in practice. She knew the architecture of the silence she was living inside, and she had chosen, in that moment, to stay inside it. But those papers, that folder, the way that man had stood completely still while Vernon screamed in his face, the way he had never raised his voice, not when Vernon grabbed the hoodie, not when he was driven down onto the marble, not even when they walked him out through the service door with 2 guards holding his arms, the way he had been so completely, devastatingly calm. She had watched 100 interactions at that desk in 3 years. She had watched Vernon in all his different registers, irritable, imperious, dismissive, openly contemptuous. She had watched visitors flinch and shrink and accommodate him because that was what the lobby trained you to do. She had never watched anyone respond to Vernon the way that man had, with dignity, not defiance, not anger, not the performance of someone who is pretending to be calm while seething underneath. Actual bone-deep practiced dignity, the kind that doesn't require an audience to exist, the kind you inherit. She pressed her face into her pillow and thought about the folder, the cracked leather, the broken clasp repaired with a small brass brad, the careful way the man had carried it, pressed against his chest, the way you carry something that means more than what it contains. She'd left it on the corner of her desk. She should have called someone. She hadn't. She lay in the dark and carried the weight of that. Let me take you back to the lobby one more time, because I want you to understand something about what happened there. Not just the cruelty of it, but the architecture of it. The way a single afternoon like that one is built from 100 small decisions made by 100 different people. Vernon Sykes did not wake up that morning deciding to be the villain of someone else's story. He woke up, as he always did, certain that he knew how the world worked, certain in his ability to read a room, read a person, know at a glance who belonged and who didn't. He had been rewarded for this certainty for 5 years. Nobody had ever told him he was wrong. Nobody had ever faced him with the consequences of being wrong. Certainty without accountability is the most dangerous substance known to the human ego. He had walked into that lobby that morning the same man he always was. And 14 complaints, filed and buried over 3 years, had made him exactly this certain that he would never face a reckoning. Bruce Garland had made those complaints disappear, not out of active malice, out of something quieter and in some ways more corrosive, convenience, the particular moral laziness of a man who has learned that looking away is easier than looking at things directly, and that in large organizations, the person who makes the problem go away quietly is valued more than the person who insists on making it visible. Bruce had reviewed 14 complaints. 14 times he had written 4 words, "No action required." And Cassie Elliott, sitting behind her desk with the folder in her hands, had added her silence to both of theirs. The lobby doesn't ask you to actively participate in harm. It just asks you to stay quiet, to look at your screen, to find something urgent to attend to when the thing happening 3 feet from you requires a person to stand up and say, "Stop." The lobby of Meridian Security Group on that Wednesday afternoon was full of people who chose not to be that person. Marcus Calloway absorbed all of it, every dismissal, every turned head, every person who walked around him instead of toward him. He absorbed it, and he didn't let it break him because he was his mother's son. And his mother had absorbed it for 24 years in lobbies exactly like that one. And she had never let it break her either. But here is what Vernon and Bruce and every person in that lobby failed to understand. Dignity absorbed is not dignity destroyed. It's dignity documented. And the cameras on every corner of that lobby had been rolling the entire time. Act 4. The reckoning Thursday morning arrived the way significant mornings sometimes do, quietly, with no indication from the sky that everything was about to change. 7:51 a.m. Sunlight hit the glass face of Meridian Security Group and turned the whole building the color of amber. Inside, the morning shift filed in through the revolving doors. Badge swipes, the low conversation of people who didn't yet know what day it actually was. Cassie pushed through the door and stopped. 2 men in dark suits she didn't recognize stood near the elevator bank. Behind them, a woman with a press credential and a cameraman were setting up equipment by the far wall. A second camera crew was adjusting a light stand near the reception desk. "What is this?" Jordan whispered behind her. Cassie didn't answer. Her eyes had moved to the monitors above the elevator doors, the ones that usually cycled through quarterly figures and employee birthdays and fire drill reminders. The screens were dark, all of them, blank. Small clusters of people gathered near the elevator bank and the reception desk. Voices were low, uncertain. Is someone getting fired? There are cameras everywhere. Did something happen? Vernon walked in at 7:58. Same uniform, same polished badge, same pressed creases. He scanned the lobby, took in the camera crews, the suited men he didn't recognize, the unusual energy of the room. He frowned. Then he straightened, because Vernon Sykes did not show uncertainty in his lobby. He walked to his post, folded his arms, planted his feet. "Does anyone know what this is about?" he asked a colleague. "Something big," the colleague said. "That's all I know." Vernon nodded, unhappy but contained. Whatever it was happening in his lobby, and his lobby was his. 8 o'clock exactly. Every screen in the building lit up at once. Lobby monitors, hallway displays, break room televisions, conference room projectors on all 18 floors, all of them showing the same message. White text on a black background. Clean, simple, designed to be read and reread. Meridian Security Group has been acquired. Effective as of 9:47 p.m. Wednesday. Please welcome your new owner. All staff to their positions. An announcement will follow. The lobby erupted. Acquired? By who? When? How? For how much? Vernon read the screen. Then he read it again. His arms unfolded slowly, as though the muscles in them had lost their certainty. His feet shifted position for the first time in years. He looked at the camera crews. He looked at the suited men. He looked at Cassie behind the reception desk. Cassie was looking directly at him, not at the screen, at him. Her face was pale, and in her eyes, Vernon had seen fear in people's eyes before, usually people he was currently intimidating. This was different. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid for him. That was the moment Vernon Sykes felt the first cold thing move through his stomach. His radio crackled. "Vernon, come to the security office, now. Bruce Garland." But the voice was wrong, thin, stripped of its usual dry authority. The voice of a man reading from a script someone else wrote. Vernon walked down the side corridor. The same corridor. Fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead. Concrete underfoot. The same narrow path he had walked Marcus Calloway down less than 18 hours ago. His boots sounded different in here now. Quieter. Smaller. Bruce was standing behind his desk in the security office. Not sitting, standing, both hands on the backrest of his chair, knuckles whitened. The door was open, which he never did. "Bruce, what's going on? Who acquired us?" Bruce looked at him. His face had the specific gray pallor of a man who knows what's coming next and has already spent the last 20 minutes trying to find a version of it where his own name doesn't appear prominently. "He wants to see you." "Who does?" "The new owner." "What floor?" A pause so small it barely happened. 14. The number hit Vernon somewhere between his chest and his stomach. 14. The same floor. The same number the man in the hoodie had said he had a meeting on. Floor 14. "Who is he, Bruce?" Bruce swallowed. His throat moved like something going down hard. "Just go, Vernon. He's waiting." Vernon turned and walked to the elevator. The doors opened. He stepped in. He pressed 14. The doors closed. The elevator hummed. Floor numbers changed above the door. 2, 5, 8, 11. Vernon stood in the elevator and looked at his reflection in the polished metal doors. Same uniform, same badge. Same pressed creases. But the face looking back at him was a different face than the one that had occupied those clothes for 5 years. The certainty was gone. In its place, the particular nauseating vertigo of a man who is beginning to understand, in a slow and terrible way, that the ground he thought was solid may not have been solid at all. 13, 14. The doors opened, a long hallway. Dark hardwood floors, soft lighting from recessed fixtures overhead. A corridor that felt like the inside of a place where decisions get made. At the end, glass doors. Open. Beyond them, the executive boardroom. Vernon walked. The boardroom was massive. A long table of dark walnut running the full length of the room. Leather chairs on both sides. Floor-to-ceiling windows on the far wall. The Atlanta skyline behind them in morning gold. At the far end of the table, alone, sat a man in a charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie, hands folded on the table in front of him. In front of him, a worn leather folder, cracked along the spine, corners scuffed to bare hide, the clasp repaired with a small brass brad that didn't quite match. Vernon's legs stopped, not metaphorically. They literally stopped working. His hand found the back of the nearest chair. He gripped it to stay upright. The man at the end of the table looked up. Same face, same eyes, same absolute calm. Yesterday, that face had been pressed against the marble floor of this building's lobby, with Vernon's knee in the center of its back. Today, it sat at the head of a $350 million company that Vernon had just learned he worked for. Marcus Calloway looked at him and waited. No anger in his expression, no triumph, no performance of satisfaction. Just the quiet, patient attention of a man who has been waiting for a particular conversation and is prepared to take the time it needs. "Sir," Vernon's voice came out wrong, cracked, like something under pressure. I didn't know." Marcus let the silence hold. 3 seconds. 5. The length of time it takes for silence to stop being a pause and start being a response. Then, evenly, without heat. That's the point. You didn't know, so you showed me exactly who you are. He reached forward and slid a single sheet of paper across the walnut table. It stopped in front of the empty chair across from Marcus. Sit down. Vernon pulled the chair out. The legs dragged against the hardwood. He sat with his back straight because his body had forgotten how to do anything else, even now. Marcus opened the leather folder. He removed a thick stack of documents, each flagged with a red marker at the top right corner. He set them on the table between them. 11 complaints. 11 formal complaints filed against you over the past 3 years through Meridian's internal process. Every one of them submitted to your supervisor, Bruce Garland, and every single one marked, reviewed, no action required. He began to lay them out, one by one, each one face up, each one readable. A 22-year-old applicant here for a job interview. You told him the service entrance was around back. He wasn't making a delivery. He was applying for a position in your department. Vernon's eyes moved to the paper, then away. A 58-year-old woman coming to sign paperwork related to her late husband's life insurance policy, serviced through one of Meridian's contracted clients. You asked if she was there for housekeeping. She was here to sign legal documents. Another paper. The trial came 11 weeks after the arrest. Vernon Sykes stood in a Fulton County courtroom in a suit that cost more than his monthly salary and fit him in the way that expensive things sometimes don't fit people who are wearing them for the first time. His attorney argued context, argued the pressures of a demanding security environment, argued a lapse in judgment from a dedicated employee, argued that in the heat of the moment, faced with an unverifiable claim from an individual displaying no identification, the prosecution played the video, all 4 minutes and 18 seconds of it. The courtroom was very quiet. The jury watched Vernon on the screen, watched the full sequence, the approach, the escalation, the grab, the impact, the knee, watched the papers scatter. Watch the photograph land face up on the marble. Vernon looked away before the video finished. 12 witnesses gave testimony over 2 days. 7 of the 11 original complainants took the stand. The 22-year-old applicant, who had subsequently received a job offer from Calloway Capital's operations team and accepted it, described standing at the lobby door in his interview suit while Vernon pointed toward the back of the building. The 58-year-old widow described the specific quality of her humiliation, the way she'd had to decide in real time between asserting herself and completing the paperwork her late husband had left unfinished. She'd completed the paperwork. She'd driven home and sat in her driveway for 30 minutes before she trusted herself to go inside. The retired pastor described a lobby full of people who had watched him empty his pockets and said nothing. They all watched, he said. I looked around that lobby, and everyone there watched it happen. And I thought, this is the part nobody talks about. Not just the man who does a thing. Everyone who watches. Different days, different people, the same lobby, the same guard, the same 4 words. You don't belong here. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Guilty. Assault causing bodily injury. Guilty. False imprisonment. Guilty. Civil rights violation under federal statute. Sentence. 22 months in state custody. 5 years probation following release. Permanent disqualification from employment in any security or law enforcement capacity. Mandatory completion of behavioral rehabilitation and civil rights education programs. When the verdict was read, Vernon Sykes stood with his hands folded in front of him and looked at nothing in particular, on the wall above the jury box. He was led out through a side door. The irony was not lost on anyone in that courtroom. Marcus Calloway stood on the courthouse steps in the early December morning. Cameras, microphones, Dana Holloway in the front row. He spoke for less than a minute. No notes, no prepared statement. This case was never about one guard. It was never about one lobby. It was about what we accept when we decide that certain people don't have to answer for how they treat other people. He paused. The cameras held on him. If a man can do what was done in that lobby, in broad daylight, surrounded by cameras, surrounded by witnesses, in a building with all of that visibility and all of that accountability, then I need you to ask yourself what is happening in the places where nobody is watching. Another pause. We have to be the people who watch. We have to be the cameras in the rooms that don't have them. He stepped back from the microphones. That was all he said. It was enough. 1 month after the verdict, Marcus announced the full restructuring of Meridian Security Group. Every item was made public. Mandatory anti-discrimination and de-escalation training for all personnel, not a calendar event. Actual training, conducted, documented, verified. Body cameras for every on-site security employee. Footage retained for 90 days. Accessible to independent review. An independent civil rights complaint hotline operated by an external organization with no financial relationship with Meridian. Annual third-party audits of all internal complaint processes. A zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory conduct, documented, enforced, and reported publicly each year. And one more thing, a scholarship fund, named after a woman who had carried a leather folder to work every day for 24 years and had never once seen her name in the news. The Evelyn Calloway Foundation. Established for the children of service workers, janitors, cleaners, maintenance staff, security personnel, full tuition, books, housing, everything Evelyn Calloway had never been given the chance to provide for herself. Marcus signed the foundation paperwork at his desk on the 14th floor, with the same pen he'd used to sign the acquisition. He set the pen down and looked at the photograph. For you, Mama? 6 months later, the lobby of Meridian Security Group looked like itself. Same marble floors, same 30-foot ceilings, same glass revolving doors catching the morning light, same silver compass rose above the entrance. But you felt the difference the moment you walked in, not in any single thing you could point to. In the temperature of the room, in the way the air sat. Near the front entrance, at eye level on the wall beside the door, a small bronze plaque had been installed. Simple, easy to miss if you were in a hurry, easy to find if you were paying attention. 5 words. Respect costs nothing. Cruelty does. On a Thursday morning in early spring, a young man pushed through the revolving doors. 23 or 24. A clean shirt, not expensive but ironed. The kind of ironing that takes time and care. Khaki pants with a crease pressed by hand. A manila folder tucked under his arm. He stopped just inside the door and looked at the lobby the way people look at spaces that feel too large for them. The cautious assessment of someone deciding whether they belong. He walked toward the reception desk. Careful steps, sneakers quiet on the marble. Cassie Elliott looked up. She had stayed. That was her choice. In the weeks after the acquisition, when several people she'd worked alongside had quietly left rather than face the restructuring. She had stayed because the alternative was to carry what she'd done, what she'd not done, into whatever came next, and never answer for it. She'd given a full voluntary statement to Detective Cross's investigation. Every detail, the folder, the papers, what she'd read, what she'd understood, what she'd chosen not to say. She'd testified at the trial. She'd looked at the empty chair where Vernon no longer sat and said what she'd seen and what she'd failed to do about it. She was still behind the desk, still doing her job, different now, in a way that didn't announce itself. She looked at the young man. She saw the folder, the careful posture, the nervous energy of someone presenting themselves to a place that holds power over their immediate future. She smiled. Not a professional reflex, not a customer service tool deployed from habit. A real one, the kind that requires nothing to produce except the decision to see the person in front of you. "Good morning. How can I help you?" The young man's shoulders dropped half an inch with something that looked like relief. "I have an interview, 9th floor. My name should be on." "I see you." She checked the screen. "You're all set. Elevator bank is right to your right. 9th floor." A small pause. "Good luck today." He thanked her. He walked toward the elevator. His sneakers were quiet on the marble. At the security post near the pillar, the same pillar, a new guard stood. 26, maybe 27. Calloway Capital badge. Body camera clipped to his shoulder, red light steady. He made eye contact with the young man as he passed. Nodded once. "Have a good one." 3 words. The young man pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. He stepped in. The doors closed. 3 words. That was all it cost. 14 floors above, Marcus Calloway stood at his office window. The same room, the same walnut table, the same leather chairs, the same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city his mother had cleaned for 24 years. On his desk, a small monitor. The lobby feed from camera 3, bottom right corner of the screen, no larger than a paperback book. He'd watched the whole exchange. He watched it the way you watch something you've been working toward for a long time and have not let yourself believe in until it's actually happening in front of you. He turned from the window. On the desk, beside the monitor, the leather folder, still cracked, still scuffed. He'd had a craftsman offer to restore it. He'd said no. Beside the folder, the photograph. Evelyn Calloway in her work uniform, outside an office building on a Tuesday morning, mop in one hand, lunch bag in the other, tired eyes, proud smile. Marcus sat down. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he said it softly, in the quiet of an empty room that didn't feel empty at all. "We did it, Mama." Closing narration. "I want to leave you with this. Marcus Calloway didn't win because he had money. He didn't win because he got lucky, or because a video went viral, or because the internet showed up on his behalf. He won because he understood something that very few people take the time to actually understand. Character is not what you perform in front of the people who can reward or punish you. Character is what you do and who you are when you believe nobody important is watching." Vernon Sykes believed nobody important was watching. He was wrong. He was wrong because the man in the hoodie was important, not because of his net worth, not because of his name, not because of what he would turn out to be capable of doing. He was important because every person who walks through a door and asks to be treated with basic dignity is important. Full stop. No conditions, no prerequisites. That is the thing that doesn't require money or status or the right suit. It only requires a decision. And here is the other thing. The thing that lives underneath all of this. The thing that the people who watched and said nothing in that lobby will carry with them long after this story fades. Silence has a cost too. Not as dramatic a cost as what Vernon paid. Not as visible, not as immediate, but the person who watches something happen and looks away, who finds something urgent to study on their phone, who walks around rather than toward. That person pays something too. They pay it in what they become. Every time you choose to not be the person who says stop when stop is clearly the right word, you practice being a little bit less than you were before. It's a quiet erosion, gradual. Easy to miss until one day you're standing in a gray room under fluorescent lights trying to explain to someone why you signed your name 14 times under the words, "No action required." We can all be better than that lobby. We can all choose to see the person in front of us, not the hoodie, not the folder, not the shoes, not the assumptions we've been trained by something we never examined to reach for before we've even heard their name. We can all say good morning and mean it. We can all nod and say, have a good one, and mean that too. We can decide to be the culture we want to walk into instead of the one that already exists. Because sometimes the person in the hoodie is carrying something far more important than you imagine. And sometimes what they're carrying belongs to their mother. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you, or a moment when you chose to see someone who might have been easy to overlook. Every single comment gets read. Every single story matters. Subscribe, because the next story carries a truth that will stay with you for a long time. And remember, respect costs nothing. Cruelty does.